Christmas has always been my favorite time of year, which is why it took me so long to understand that what happened wasn't just bad luck or coincidence, but something deliberate that had been waiting for me. I was 32 that winter, living alone in a small rental house outside a quiet Pennsylvania town where nothing ever made the news unless a deer wandered onto Main Street. I worked nights as a hospice intake coordinator, so my schedule was strange, and I spent most holidays by myself. That year, Christmas Eve fell on one of my nights off, and for the first time in a while, I decided to make the house feel less empty. I bought a real tree, strung white lights around the windows, and put a cheap plastic wreath on the front door. I even wrapped a few old books and a scarf I'd bought for myself, just so there would be something under the tree. I remember laughing at how pathetic that looked, but I left them there anyway. The snow started early that afternoon, thick flakes that blurred the street and muffled everything. I liked that part. It made the world feel smaller, safer. By dusk, the road was barely visible, and the only sound was the wind moving through the bare trees. Around 6, I heard a knock at the door. It startled me, because no one ever came by unannounced, especially not in weather like that. When I looked through the peephole, I saw a man standing on my porch, holding a cardboard box. He had a red knit hat pulled low, and a scarf covering his mouth. He waved when he saw the shadow move behind the door. I didn't open it right away. I asked who he was, and he said he was delivering a package that needed a signature. That didn't make sense. I wasn't expecting anything, and it was Christmas Eve. I told him to leave it on the porch. He hesitated, then said it was marked hand deliver only. Something about the way he said it made my stomach tighten. I told him I wasn't signing for anything, and stepped away from the door. The knock came again, harder this time. He called my name. Hearing my name come from the other side of that door made my chest go cold. I hadn't said it. I hadn't confirmed who I was. I asked how he knew my name, and he didn't answer right away. When he did, he said, "You ordered it last month. You don't remember?" I didn't respond. I backed away and grabbed my phone, my hand shaking so badly I almost dropped it. Before I could dial anyone, the knocking stopped. I waited, listening, my heart pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it. After a full minute, I crept back to the door and looked out again. The porch was empty. No footprints. No box. Just snow already filling in where he'd been standing. I spent the rest of the evening jumping at every sound. I told myself it was nothing, that maybe it was the wrong address, that I'd scared him off. Around 10, I tried to sleep on the couch with the lights on. Sometime after midnight, I woke up to a sound coming from inside the house. It was faint, like something being dragged slowly across the floor. I held my breath and listened. It stopped. Then I heard it again. Closer, followed by a soft thud. I sat up, my heart racing, and called out, asking if someone was there. My voice sounded small, thin. No answer. I grabbed the fireplace poker and stood, every instinct screaming at me to get out. But I didn't want to open the front door. I edged toward the hallway, the tree lights casting warped shadows on the walls. That's when I saw the back door. It was open, just an inch. Snow drifting in along the threshold. I knew I had locked it. I always locked it. I stood there staring, trying to understand how it could be open without me hearing anything. Then I noticed something else. On the kitchen table, where there had been nothing before, sat the cardboard box. It was damp around the edges, like it had been sitting outside in the snow. My name was written across the top, in thick black marker. I didn't touch it. I didn't even get close. I backed away, my legs trembling, and ran for the front door. As soon as I opened it, the porch light flicked off, plunging everything into darkness. I screamed and ran anyway, slipping on the steps and tumbling into the snow. I didn't feel the cold. I didn't feel anything but terror. I ran barefoot down the street to my nearest neighbor's house, pounding on their door until the lights came on and someone opened it. They called the police. When the officers arrived and searched my house, they found no one. The back door showed no signs of forced entry. The box was still on the table. Inside it were the gifts from under my tree, neatly unwrapped and placed back inside, along with a photo of me asleep on my couch. The timestamp said it had been taken 2 weeks earlier. I broke down when I saw that. I couldn't stop shaking. The police told me it was probably someone I knew. Maybe a prank that went too far. They asked if I had an ex, or someone from work who might hold a grudge. I couldn't think of anyone. They took the box and the photo and said they'd look into it. I didn't go back to that house. I stayed with the neighbor until morning, then packed a bag and drove to my sister's place 3 hours away. Christmas morning passed in a blur of coffee and forced smiles. I didn't tell my family everything. I said someone had broken in, that the police were handling it. A week later, the police called to say they had no leads, no fingerprints, no DNA. The photo paper wasn't traceable. They suggested I install cameras wherever I moved next. I tried to move on. I found a new apartment in a different town and started over. For a while, it worked. Months passed without incident. The following December, a package appeared outside my apartment door. No return address. No delivery company markings. Just my name, written the same way. I didn't open it. I called the police immediately. They came, took it, and told me I'd done the right thing. Inside, they said, was a single Christmas ornament. A small wooden house, painted to look exactly like the one I used to live in. Right down to the wreath on the door. On the bottom, carved into the wood, were the words, "You forgot your lights." The case was reopened, but nothing ever came of it. No arrests. No explanations. I still work nights. I still sleep with the lights on. Every Christmas Eve, I sit awake until dawn, listening to every sound, waiting for a knock that I pray never comes. And every year, without fail, when I check my phone on Christmas morning, there's a new photo in my camera roll. Always taken from inside wherever I'm living. Always while I'm asleep. Christmas used to be my favorite word. It meant pine needles in the carpet, my mom humming off-key while she wrapped presents, the heater rattling like it was alive. It meant safety. I didn't understand how fragile that feeling was, until the year it was taken from me. Quietly, patiently, by someone who knew exactly how to hide behind holiday cheer. I was 28 that December, back in my hometown for the first time in almost a decade. My dad had died in October. Sudden heart attack. And my mom couldn't stand the idea of spending Christmas alone in the house where they'd lived for 40 years. So I moved back in. Temporarily. That was the word we used. Temporary. As if grief had an expiration date. The neighborhood hadn't changed much. Same sagging mailboxes. Same cracked sidewalks. Same people who waved but didn't ask questions. The house smelled like dust and cinnamon. My mom's attempt to make things feel normal. She insisted on decorating, even though her hands shook when she pulled the ornaments from the box. I helped her hang the lights, one strand flickering like it was unsure whether to stay alive. The first sign that something was wrong came the night we put the tree up. We were in the living room, laughing at how crooked it looked. When the doorbell rang, it was already dark, the cold pressing against the windows like a living thing. We weren't expecting anyone. My mom froze, her smile fading in a way that made my stomach tighten. I opened the door. A man stood on the porch holding a tin of cookies, wrapped in red cellophane. He was maybe late 40s, clean cut, wearing a Santa hat that looked a little too new. He smiled like we were old friends. "Evening," he said. "I'm Greg. Just moved in down the street. Figured I'd introduce myself." That should have been harmless, normal. But there was something about the way he said it. Like he'd rehearsed the exact tone. Like he knew how this moment was supposed to go. My mom came up beside me and immediately relaxed. She had that way about her. Trusting to a fault. She invited him in from the cold. He declined. Said he didn't want to intrude. He handed over the cookies. Wished us a Merry Christmas. And left. I watched him walk down the driveway, his shadow stretching too long across the snow. The cookies went straight into the trash. After my mom went to bed, I told myself I was being paranoid, but I didn't like the way he'd looked past me, into the house, like he was taking inventory. Over the next week, Craig became impossible to avoid. He waved every time we left the house. He shoveled our sidewalk without being asked. He somehow always knew when we'd be home. If my mom went to the store, he'd mention seeing her car. If I took the trash out late, he'd be outside, smoking, smiling like it was coincidence. "He's just friendly," my mom said. When I brought it up. Friendly doesn't watch. Friendly doesn't linger. The first real crack came on December 18th. I woke up early to the sound of the back door creaking. That house had a lot of noises, but this was different. Slow. Careful. I grabbed my phone and eased into the hallway, heart hammering so loud I was sure whoever it was could hear it. The kitchen light was off, but moonlight spilled through the window, enough to show the door standing open a few inches. Then I heard breathing. Not my mom's. Deeper. Controlled. I flicked the light on. The kitchen was empty. The door was closed. I stood there shaking for a long time, before convincing myself I dreamed it. Grief does strange things. That's what I told myself. That's what I needed to believe. The next morning, the cookies were back on the counter. The same tin. Same red wrapping. I asked my mom where they came from. She frowned. "You brought them back out, didn't you?" I hadn't. I dumped them again. this time crushing them into the trash and taking the bag straight to the curb. I didn't sleep that night. On Christmas Eve, the power went out. The wind was howling. Snow coming down hard. And the house went dark, with a pop that felt final. My mom lit candles, trying to make it feel cozy, but I saw the fear in her eyes. She hated the dark. Always had. That's when the knocking started. Not at the door. On the walls. Soft at first. Then harder. Like someone testing where we were weakest. We sat in silence, listening. My phone had no signal. The landline was dead. Outside, the storm swallowed everything. Then a voice came through the darkness. "Merry Christmas." Craig called. My mom gasped. I stood up, every instinct screaming, "How do you know our power's out?" I shouted. A pause. Then a chuckle. "Whole street is dark," he said. "Just checking on you too. Made sure you're safe." I told him to leave. I don't remember exactly what I said. Just that it was loud. And desperate. "I'll be right outside if you need anything," he replied. "Wouldn't want you alone tonight." His footsteps crunched away. But the sense of being watched didn't leave. We barricaded ourselves in the living room. Couch against the door. Fire poker in my hand. My mom cried quietly, apologizing over and over, like she thought this was somehow her fault. Around midnight, the knocking came back. Louder. Closer. Then the front door handle rattled. I screamed for him to go away. The rattling stopped. For a moment, there was nothing. Then the sound of glass breaking. He came through the kitchen window. I saw him silhouetted against the snow. The Santa hat gone. Face twisted into something ugly. And excited. He had a knife in his hand. Small but sharp. Catching the candlelight. "I told you I'd watch out for you," he said. I don't remember everything that happened after that. I remember charging him. Because there was no other option. I remember the sound my mom made when she thought I'd been stabbed. I remember slamming the fire poker into his arm and hearing something snap. He ran. By the time the police arrived, the storm had eased, and Craig was gone. They found blood leading to his house. Inside, they found photos, hundreds of them, taken through our windows, of my mom sleeping, of me changing clothes, of the tree, the presents, the life we thought was private. They arrested him at the hospital the next morning. He told the staff he'd slipped on ice. He's in prison now. They said he'd been watching us since my dad died. He liked broken homes. That's the phrase they used. We sold the house in the spring. I don't decorate anymore. I don't bake cookies. I don't trust strangers with Santa hats or friendly smiles. Christmas still comes every year, whether I want it to or not. But now, when the nights get quiet and the lights flicker, I remember how close we came to not making it out. And I listen, because I know how easily someone can hide behind holiday cheer, waiting for the right moment to knock. Christmas has a way of sharpening memories, like cold air on exposed skin. I used to love it. Lights on the gutters, pine needles stuck in the carpet, the the smell of sugar cookies burning just enough to make my mom swear. That all ended the year I was 23. The year Christmas stopped being a season and turned into a sound I still hear at night. I had just moved back to my hometown in Pennsylvania after a bad breakup and a worse job loss. I was staying in my childhood house, the same narrow two-story, with the creaky third step and a radiator that knocked like a trapped animal. My mom had died 2 years earlier. My dad the year before that. So the house felt hollow, like it was waiting for something to happen. Christmas was supposed to fill it back up. That's what my sister said when she dropped off a box of ornaments and told me she couldn't stay. She had her own family now. I didn't blame her. But when her taillights disappeared down the street, the silence felt intentional, like the house had been holding its breath. On Christmas Eve, it started snowing just before dark. Big, slow flakes that muted the world. I put on the old vinyl record my dad used to play, poured myself a glass of cheap whiskey, and tried to feel normal. Around 7, someone knocked on the door. That alone wasn't strange. People in town still confused the house for my parents, and my mom used to bake for half the block. I assumed it was a neighbor with a plate of something I didn't need. When I opened the door, there was a man standing on the porch. Late 40s maybe. Thin. Wearing a red Santa hat pulled low. He held a small cardboard box wrapped in green paper. He smiled like we were old friends. "Merry Christmas," he said. And his voice was calm. Practiced. I told him he had the wrong house. He shook his head and said my name. Not loud. Not threatening. Just said it like it was obvious. My stomach tightened. He said my parents would have wanted me to have it. Then he placed the box in my hands and stepped back into the snow without waiting for a response. I watched him walk down the sidewalk and disappear between parked cars. I stood there longer than I should have, holding that box, the cold seeping through the paper. I didn't see him get into a car. I didn't hear an engine. He was just gone. Inside, I set the box on the kitchen table and stared at it. It wasn't heavy. No ticking. No smell. Eventually, I told myself it was a delayed delivery. A weird neighbor. Something explainable. I unwrapped it. Inside was a cassette tape, unlabeled except for my mom's handwriting on the side. My hands started shaking before I even realized why. I hadn't seen her handwriting since the hospital. I still had an old tape player in the basement. I sat on the stairs to listen. At first, it was just static. Then my mom's voice came through. Strained, like she was whispering into a phone she didn't trust. "If you're hearing this, it means I didn't make it back in time." I remember dropping the tape. It clattered on the concrete floor. Her voice still going, filling the basement with words that didn't belong in the present. She talked about a man who had been watching the owls for years. Someone my dad had confronted once and never talked about again. She said he believed Christmas was a test, that families who didn't appreciate what they had needed to be reminded what loss felt like. She said he had taken photos, left gifts, waited. Then the tape ended. I didn't sleep that night. I checked every lock twice, then 3 times. Around 2 in the morning, I heard footsteps on the porch. Slow, heavy. I held my breath and listened. as something scraped against the door, like a fingernail dragging down the wood. Then the doorbell rang. Not once. 3 times. Perfectly spaced. I didn't answer. I stood in the hallway with a kitchen knife, my heart pounding so hard it made my ears ring. The footsteps moved away. After a while, I convinced myself it was over. Christmas morning, I found a gift under the tree. I hadn't put it there. It was wrapped in the same green paper. Inside was a framed photograph of my family, taken from across the street, dated 3 years earlier. On the back, written in red marker, were the words, "One left." I called the police. They came, took notes, told me it was probably a sick prank. They didn't find footprints. The snow had been disturbed too much. They suggested I stay with someone else. I told them I would. That night, as I packed, the power went out. The house fell into darkness, the Christmas lights blinking off one by one. From upstairs, I heard the floorboards creak. Slow, deliberate, like someone who knew the sound they made. I ran for the front door. It was locked from the inside. That's when I smelled it. Pine. Fresh. Sharp. A real tree smell, overwhelming. From behind me, a voice whispered, "Merry Christmas." I don't remember everything after that. I remember the knife slipping from my hand. I remember the Santa hat on the floor. I remember him telling me my parents had screamed too. I woke up in the hospital on December 27th. They said a neighbor heard something and called it in. They said the man was dead. Heart attack. They said he had been living in an abandoned house 2 streets over. Walls covered in photos. Calendars marked with red circles every December. Sometimes, late at night, when the snow falls just right, I hear the doorbell ring 3 times in my dreams. And I wake up knowing Christmas will never be quiet again.